Okay, let's see. We talked about anger. We talked about. Did we talk about lust? No. Oh, okay. So, let me ask you a question. Why is lust a deadly sin? To answer that question, we need to better understand what lust is. Now, for the most part, when most people hear that word lust, what they're thinking of is sins of the flesh. Basically sexual sins, sexual immorality. That's right. But I personally believe that there's a lot more to that word lust than just sins of the flesh. What do you mean? Well, let me explain it this way. In Dante's Inferno, he says that those unrepentant sinners who go to hell for their sin of lust, their eternal punishment is going to be that they are going to be pushed around by a relentless wind. So my question is, what does a hurricane have to do with sexual immorality? I mean, what exactly does that... What does a relentless wind have to do with a man looking at a woman in a particular way that he should be looking at his own wife in that particular way? I think I'm starting to see your point. Another thing is that I have watched the Star Wars prequels, and I have especially seen Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Before the great big battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, who has now become Darth Vader, but without the suit, we haven't gotten to that part of his transformation just yet, they have this argument before they fight, where Anakin Skywalker is saying, "You have taken my Padme away from me. You will not take her away from me." And Obi-Wan says, "No, you have done that yourself. Your anger and your lust for power have already done that." It's kind of interesting, what exactly does power, especially political power, have to do with, sexual immorality? Well, some people are actually attracted to people who are in power. I think it's more than just that. I think another way to explain it is basically, and this is where I'm really thankful that I am a huge fan of horror films, with the subgenre of psychological thrillers. There are some psychological thrillers that tell stories about obsessed lovers, obsessed people who are obsessed with people in a romantic way. Like Play Misty for Me, and another great example would be Fatal Attraction, which stars Michael Douglas and Glenn Close. That was a great movie. It was. And, throughout the movie, we see that, Glenn Close's character, Alex Forrest, she infatuated with Michael Douglas's character. I forgot his name, but Dan. His name is Dan, but I forgot his last name. So anyway, Alex becomes obsessed with Dan. She falls in love with him, and but Dan's not really interested in her that way. She was just a one-night stand for him. Oh, and the worst part was she was married. I remember. That was a bad decision. Absolutely. So it's like, so Dan was not interested in Alex romantically. He was just interested in using her as a plaything, until, his wife came back home, and we all know how the story goes. So basically, she develops an obsession with him to the point where now she's trying to manipulate his life to where she can have him all for herself. And it gets to the point where towards the end of the movie, they get into this life and death fight that actually results in Alex Forrest being killed off. So what I'm trying to get at is that I think lust is a lot more than just, being attracted to a random woman. I know what the Bible says. Matthew says, Jesus says in the Gospel of Matthew that if you look after another woman lustfully, you have already committed adultery with her in your heart. And some Christians, like Southern Baptists, they take that way too far, and they say that if you even look at another woman, you're going straight to hell. Well, that doesn't sound right. Right. Look, we got to acknowledge that, even if we are faithful to our wives or our girlfriends, there's still going to be a part of our human nature that just, we can't help but admire the beauty of other human beings, of other women. It's just in our nature. But I think the real issue is, how much enjoyment do we get from that? And another thing is that, what I was trying to get at when it comes to the story of Alex Forrest and Fatal Attraction is that I think another word to describe lust, like a synonym, would be obsession. If you are so obsessed with somebody, your whole life pretty much becomes that person. Your life revolves around that person, and it's all about, I gotta have that person in my life by any means necessary. And Alex Forrest does it in such a way to where she lies about being pregnant with Dan's baby and breaking into his house and killing off his daughter's pet rabbit and even kidnapping his daughter just to play with his mind. Just doing whatever she felt she could in order to make Dan her husband or her lover forever. So I believe that that's why lust is a deadly sin, is because, there's nothing wrong with admiring the beauty of another human being. But if it gets to the point where that's all you're thinking about and your whole life is about, I have got to make that person mine, that's when it becomes a dangerous thing. And that, I believe, is why lust is one of the 7 deadly sins. You gave me something to think about, Vance, and I want to say thank you so much for giving us that input. I think we all needed to hear that, and I say, God bless you. Thanks, Mr. President. You're welcome.